The shimmering scales of the dragon, normally a dazzling emerald, were dull with dust and blood, its massive form slumped against the jagged rocks of the canyon. A dozen alien ships orbited overhead, their occupants observing the spectacle with detached curiosity, but none dared approach. Then a small figure darted forward, a child with bright eyes and a plastic water bottle clutched in his hand. "It's okay, I'm here to help," Joshua Allen yelled, his voice echoing slightly in the vast emptiness. The canyon itself was a scar upon the landscape, a desolate expanse of red rock and twisted scrub. Dust devils danced across the canyon floor, mirroring the swirling uncertainty of the small group of humans huddled near the rim, watching Joshua's reckless advance. Above them, the alien ships hung like metallic vultures, their sleek, unfamiliar designs a stark contrast to the rugged terrain. Their occupants seemed to be observing, not interfering, a silent, watchful audience to the unfolding drama. Joshua, all of 8 years old, paid them no mind. He scrambled over loose rocks, his small frame propelled by a force stronger than fear, a deep well of empathy that resonated within him. He ignored the shouts of his parents, who had tried to restrain him, their voices filled with panic. He knelt beside the dragon, offering the water bottle. The plastic crinkled in his small hands. "Here," he said, his voice softer now, "you must be thirsty." Suddenly, the dragon's eyes snapped open. Golden irises, flecked with ancient wisdom and pain, locked onto Joshua. A low growl rumbled from the dragon's chest, a sound that vibrated through the very ground beneath Joshua's knees. He froze, the water bottle trembling in his grip. The other humans approached cautiously. His mother, Mary, her face etched with worry, knelt beside him, placing a protective hand on his shoulder. His father, Robert, a burly man with a weathered face, remained a few steps back, his eyes scanning the dragon warily. "Joshua, honey, come back here," Mary pleaded, her voice barely a whisper. Dr. Lena Hansen, a tall, slender woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, hurried forward. She was a xenobiologist, and her knowledge of alien life was vast, but even she seemed hesitant. "Joshua, please be careful," she said, her voice firm but gentle. "That's a saurian. They're apex predators known for their aggression. You shouldn't get any closer." Joshua ignored her, his gaze fixed on the dragon. "I just want to help," he said, his voice soft but firm. "You're hurt." He extended the water bottle further, his small hand unwavering. The dragon hesitated, its massive head cocked slightly to one side. Then slowly, cautiously, it lowered its head and lapped at the water from the bottle. The sound of its rough tongue against the plastic was surprisingly gentle. Its golden eyes never left Joshua's. Lena approached carefully, raising a handheld device. With a flick of her wrist, she activated the scanner, bathing the dragon in a faint blue light. "The injuries," she murmured, her brow furrowed. "They're caused by some kind of energy weapon. I've never seen anything like it. Internal hemorrhaging, organ damage. It won't last more than a few hours." She turned to Robert and Mary, her expression grave. "Providing medical assistance to a saurian is against intergalactic law. They're considered a hostile species by most civilizations." Joshua's face crumpled. "But she's hurt. We have to help her." He looked at his parents, his eyes pleading. "Please, Mom, Dad, we have to. She's not a monster, she's just scared." He turned back to the dragon, stroking its snout gently. "I'm going to call you Astra," he whispered. "It means star." Lena sighed, her gaze softening as she looked at Joshua and then back at the dragon, who was now drinking more eagerly. "He's right," she said quietly. "Look at her, she's sentient. She deserves a chance." She looked back at Joshua's parents. "But we can't formally request medical supplies. It would cause an incident." She paused. "We'll have to scavenge what we can." Robert ran a hand through his hair, his face a mask of conflicted emotions. Mary simply looked at Joshua, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and pride. Astra opened her eyes, a flicker of something akin to understanding in their depths. She attempted to reach out, to communicate, but her strength was fad doctor. All Dr. Hansen felt was a slight tingle in her brain, but nothing more. We need a bio-containment field generator, 3 high-capacity energy cells, the blue-banded ones from the North Storage Sector, and a neural dampener. Stat. Lena barked, her voice echoing in the makeshift triage area. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she worked, her hands a blur of motion. Robert paled. Lena, those energy cells are restricted. That's a level 4 security zone. Security protocols are secondary to saving a life, Robert, Lena snapped, not looking up from her work. Joshua, can you find the neural dampener? It's a gray box about this big, she gestured with her hands, labeled XN42. Joshua nodded, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and persistence. I know where it is. He turned to his parents, his voice pleading. We have to help her. Mary hesitated, glancing at Robert, then back at the massive, wounded dragon. Robert, we can't just. Mom, she's going to die if we don't. Joshua's voice cracked. Please. Mary looked into her son's eyes, seeing the unwavering belief there, the pure, unadulterated compassion. Something shifted within her. All right, she said, her voice firm. All right, we'll do it, but we stick together. The restricted area hummed with dormant machinery, the air thick with the metallic tang of unused equipment. Robert led the way, his footsteps hesitant. As they rounded a corner, a gruff voice stopped them cold. Halt, who goes there? Sergeant Miller stepped into view, his hand resting on the sidearm holstered at his hip. His eyes narrowed, suspicion etched on his face. What are you doing in this sector? This area is off limits. Robert swallowed hard. Sergeant Miller, we have authorization. Authorization my ass. I wasn't notified of any authorized personnel. And what's with the kid? Miller's gaze fell on Joshua, then flickered to the direction they had been heading. Don't tell me you're going after those energy cells for that thing. She's wounded, Sergeant, Joshua spoke up, his voice surprisingly steady. She needs our help. Miller scoffed. That's a Saurian war machine, kid. It doesn't need help, it needs to be put down. It's probably faking it anyway. No, she's not, Joshua insisted, his fists clenching. She's hurt and she's scared. She deserves our help just like anyone else. You don't know what you're talking about, kid, Miller sneered. These creatures are dangerous. You're risking your life for a monster. A wave of heat washed over Joshua. She's not a monster, he shouted, his voice trembling with anger. She's just different, and different doesn't mean bad. Suddenly, Lena's voice crackled over the comm in Robert's pocket. Robert, the dragon, her energy readings are spiking. I think she's trying to communicate something about an energy signature, faint but definitely there. Lena's words hung in the air. She felt a cold dread creep into her bones. That energy signature. It's unlike anything I've ever seen, the weapon that did this. It's far more advanced than anything we know about. Back in the triage area, Astra's massive chest heaved, each breath a ragged rasp. Lena placed a hand on the dragon's flank, feeling the unnatural heat radiating from its scales. Her internal organs are starting to shut down, she said, her voice grim. We need to move now. Joshua rushed to Lena's side, his eyes wide with concern. What can I do? Tell me what to do. Help me prep the field generator, Lena instructed, pointing to a complex piece of equipment. We need to contain any potential biohazards. And be careful, Joshua. This tech is alien and we don't know how it will react. As they worked, Robert and Mary, their faces etched with worry, helped Lena secure Astra to the makeshift operating table. They worked as a team, their initial fear replaced by a shared sense of purpose. Lena adjusted the scavenged energy cells, their blue glow illuminating the triage area. All right, let's see if we can stabilize her vitals. With a flick of a switch, the cells hummed to life, bathing Astra in a soft, pulsating light. Suddenly, Joshua gasped, clutching his head. Images flooded his mind, flashes of searing pain, of burning metal, of overwhelming fear. He stumbled back, his face contorted in agony. Joshua, what's wrong? Mary cried, rushing to his side. Robert stared at his son, then at the dragon, his eyes widening in disbelief. He saw the connection, the impossible link between them. Joshua wasn't just helping Astra, he was feeling her pain. Just then, Sergeant Miller's voice boomed from the entrance to the triage area. "That's enough. I'm ordering you to cease this. This charade, that creature is to be handed over to the authorities immediately." Lena stood her ground, her eyes blazing with defiance. "I'm a doctor, Sergeant Miller, and I will not stand by and watch a patient die. This is my medical authority." Robert stepped forward, placing himself between Miller and Lena. "He's right, Sergeant. Whatever this thing is, it needs help, and we're going to give it." The energy cells pulsed, bathing the room in an eerie blue light. Astra's breathing steady, but ever so slightly. "We've managed to stabilize her for now," Lena said, her voice tight with relief. "But I've found something else. There's a large piece of shrapnel lodged near her heart. It's alien, some kind of composite metal. If we don't remove it, she's not going to make it." She looked at Joshua, her expression grave. "The only way to get it out is surgery, and it's incredibly risky. I don't know if she's strong enough to survive it. It could kill her, Joshua. You need to be prepared for that possibility, kid. You may have to say goodbye." The surgical bay hummed with a sterile energy. Lena meticulously arranged her instruments on a tray, each glinting under the bright surgical lights. "All right, people," she said, her voice calm but firm, "we're going in. I need absolute focus. This isn't like anything we've ever seen. Her physiology, it's completely alien. The risks are immense. I'm talking about organ systems we can barely comprehend." She paused, her gaze sweeping over Robert and Mary. "Are you both sure you're ready for this?" Robert nodded, his face grim but determined. "We're with you, Lena, all the way." Mary squeezed Lena's shoulder. "We wouldn't miss it." Nearby, Joshua sat beside Astra, his small hand resting on her massive, scaled limb. The air crackled with an unseen energy. He squeezed her hand and closed his eyes, and his brow furrowed as he winced. A wave of images crashed through his mind, flashes of searing pain, cold terror, and a deep primal fear he'd never known before. He gasped, opening his eyes. "It's okay, Astra," he whispered, his voice trembling slightly. "You're going to be okay. They're going to help you." Lena watched them, her expression softening. The connection between the boy and the dragon was undeniable and strangely comforting. She refocused. "All right, let's get started." The surgery began. Lena moved with practiced precision, her hands a blur as she made the initial incision. The air filled with the acrid smell of cauterized flesh. "Scalpel," she said, her voice barely audible above the hum of the equipment. "Okay, Robert, vitals." "What's her heart rate?" "Holding steady at 30 cycles per minute," Robert replied, his eyes glued to the monitor. "Blood pressure is stable." Lena peered into the opening, her brow furrowing. "Her vascular system. It's unlike anything I've ever seen. The arteries are almost crystalline, and the veins, they're filled with a fluid that looks like liquid mercury." She carefully dissected the muscle tissue, revealing a network of alien organs, each pulsating with an otherworldly light. Hours passed. The tension in the surgical bay grew thicker with each passing moment. Sweat beaded on Lena's forehead as she worked, her focus unwavering. Suddenly, a piercing alarm blared through the room. "Heart rate dropping," Robert shouted. "Blood pressure plummeting." Lena's head snapped up. "What's happening?" "I don't know," Robert replied, his voice frantic. "She's crashing." Astra's massive body convulsed on the table. Her eyes snapped open, glowing with a desperate, fading light. Lena cursed under her breath. "We need to stimulate her nervous system. Now I need something to shock her back to life." Joshua, his face pale with fear, squeezed Astra's hand tighter. He closed his eyes again, focusing all his energy on her. "Fight, Astra," he thought, his voice echoing in her mind. "You have to fight. Don't give up." Unbeknownst to him, his telepathic plea resonated with Astra, triggering a surge of adrenaline that jolted her nervous system. Her eyes flickered and her heart rate stabilized just barely. "She's stabilizing," Robert exclaimed, relief flooding his voice. "She's coming back." Lena took a deep breath, wiping the sweat from her brow. Okay, focus everyone, we're not out of the woods yet. She returned to the incision, carefully removing the last pieces of shrapnel. Got it, all the fragments are out. She paused, her expression turning grim. But damn it, what is it? Mary asked, her voice infused with concern. Internal bleeding, Lena said, her voice tight. The energy weapon. It caused massive internal damage. We need to stop the bleeding and fast. Can you cauterize it? Robert asked. Lena shook her head. The damage is too extensive. We need a blood transfusion. But we don't have any alien blood, Mary exclaimed. And we don't even know if human blood is compatible. Despair threatened to engulf them. Lena fought it back. Think, we have to think. There has to be something we can do. Suddenly, Astra stirred. Her eyes locked onto Joshua's, and a faint image flashed through his mind, a vibrant green plant with large, serrated leaves. Joshua gasped. The plant, the one by the river, it can help. Lena looked at him, confused. What plant? What are you talking about? Astra showed it to me, Joshua said, his voice urgent. It has properties that can stop bleeding. I know where to find it. Lena hesitated. It's too dangerous, Joshua. We can't risk it. But we have to try, Joshua pleaded. It's her only chance. Robert stepped forward. I'll go with him, Lena. We'll be careful. Lena looked from Joshua's determined face to Robert's resolute gaze. She knew she couldn't stop them. All right, she said, her voice resigned. But be careful and hurry. Robert grabbed a medkit and a sidearm. Let's go, kid. As Robert and Joshua raced out of the surgical bay, Mary turned to Lena. What can I do? Help me create a temporary fix, Lena said, her voice regaining its focus. We need to stabilize her until they get back. Meanwhile, Robert and Joshua navigated the alien landscape, their senses on high alert. The air was thick with the smell of strange vegetation and the sounds of unseen creatures. They rounded a bend in the river, and there, it was the plant Astra had shown Joshua. As Joshua reached for the plant, a low growl echoed through the jungle. A pair of glowing eyes emerged from the shadows. A massive reptilian creature lunged at them, its jaws snapping. Robert shoved Joshua behind him, raising his weapon. Get back to the base, kid. I'll handle this. Back in the surgical bay, Mary helped Lena mix a concoction of herbs and chemicals, creating a temporary sealant to slow the bleeding. They worked feverishly, their faces etched with worry. Robert fired a shot, hitting the creature in the shoulder. It roared in pain but kept coming. Robert fired again, and the creature finally retreated into the shadows. He turned to Joshua, his face pale. Let's get this plant and get out of here. They raced back to the base, their hearts pounding. Lena extracted the essence from the plant and administered it to Astra. Slowly, miraculously, the bleeding began to subside. It's working, Mary exclaimed, relief flooding her face. The bleeding is stopping. Astra's condition slowly improved. The monitors beeped steadily and her breathing became more regular. The surgery was a success, but she remained in critical condition, teetering on the edge of life and death. As Lena leaned back, exhausted but relieved, the door to the surgical bay slammed open. Sergeant Miller strode in, his face hard. What's going on here? He demanded, his eyes sweeping over the scene. What's that alien doing on that table? We were saving her life, Sergeant, Lena said, her voice weary. Treason, Miller spat. You're aiding and abetting an alien. This is a violation of protocol. I'm reporting you to the authorities. Lena stood her ground. She was wounded, Sergeant. She needed our help. Miller sneered. You should have let her die. That's what we were ordered to do. Lena's eyes narrowed. Ordered? What are you talking about? Miller leaned in, his voice low and menacing. I was directly ordered to make sure this surgery didn't happen. Someone wanted that alien to die, Doctor, and you just made a very powerful enemy. That's where you're wrong, Commander Miller, Lena snapped, her voice tight with controlled fury. My oath is to preserve life, Xeno or otherwise. Astra was dying. I did what any doctor would do. Miller's lips pursed. Sentimentality is a luxury we can't afford, Dr. Hansen. This creature represents a potential threat. My orders were clear: contain the situation, assess the risk. And who gave you those orders? Lena challenged, stepping closer. Miller hesitated, a flicker of discomfort in his eyes. That's classified. Bull, Lena spat. This reeks of someone higher up with an agenda, someone who sees a wounded creature and only thinks of weapons and threats. It came from a high-ranking official within the Galactic Defense Force, Miller admitted, his voice low. They're suspicious of Xeno activity, especially anything Saurian. Lena's face hardened. She knew this wasn't just about Miller following orders. This was about galactic politics, fear, and prejudice. I'm contacting General Vargas. Miller's eyes widened slightly. Vargas? You know General Vargas? We go way back, Lena said, pulling out her comm device. He'll want to know about this little power play of yours. Meanwhile, in Astra's makeshift room, Joshua sat beside the massive dragon, sketching in his notebook. Astra's breathing was shallow, her emerald scales still dull. He looked up at the rise and fall of her chest, a fragile rhythm in the massive form. He showed her his drawing, a colorful depiction of him and Astra flying through space. Astra's eyes flickered open, a faint golden light within them. Joshua, a voice echoed in his mind, soft and weak. Joshua jumped, startled but thrilled. Astra, you can talk to me in my head. The attackers. They seek something I know. Astra's thoughts continued, strained. Ancient knowledge. Back in the makeshift office, Robert was hunched over a datapad, scrolling through ancient texts and historical records. Lena, you need to see this, he called out. The Saurians. They weren't always feared. Legends say they were protectors of the galaxy, betrayed long ago by a species seeking their power. Astra's voice echoed in Joshua's mind. A device. An artifact. Important to my people. But the image was fleeting, fragmented. Joshua frowned, trying to understand. What does it look like, Astra? Can you remember? Astra groaned softly, her eyes closing again. The effort was clearly exhausting. Joshua, determined to help, grabbed handfuls of dirt from a nearby container. Slowly, meticulously, he began to sculpt a landscape on the floor, mimicking the images he'd seen in Robert's research. Towering crystalline mountains, shimmering turquoise rivers, and vast, violet plains. Mary entered, her face etched with worry. Joshua, honey, are you all right? Maybe you should give Astra some space. But Mom, I want to help her remember, Joshua pleaded, his hand still shaping the dirt. Mary knelt beside him, her hand resting on his shoulder. I know you do, sweetie, but be careful, we don't know what she's capable of. Despite her concern, her voice softened. Just be careful, okay? Suddenly, the comm system C Doctor clad to life. Doctor. Hanson, you have an incoming priority call from General Vargas. Lena rushed to the comm station, her heart pounding. Vargas, it's good to hear you. We have a situation here. General Vargas's voice, strong and authoritative, filled the room. I'm aware, Lena. I'm on my way. I'll be there within the hour. In the meantime, secure Astra. I'll deal with Miller and his superiors. Thank you, Marcus, Lena said, relief washing over her. Don't thank me yet, Vargas warned. Word of a live Saurian has already spread. There will be other factions who will try to seize her for their own purposes. You need to be cautious. As Astra, Lena, Robert, and Vargas spoke, Astra suddenly had a clear memory. The location. I remember now. The crystal caves on Xylos. It's hidden there. We need to get there in order to protect it from them. Just as they started to plan their journey, a piercing alarm blared through the base. The comm system crackled again. Distress signal received from the Kepler 186F colony. They are under attack, requesting immediate assistance. Vargas's face hardened. Damn it. That's a small farming colony, barely defended. He turned to an officer. Prepare a response team. We need to get those people out of there. He paused, his gaze shifting back to Lena and Astra. This complicates things. As the response team scrambled to prepare for departure, the base shuddered violently. Alarms wailed, red lights flashed, and the sound of explosions echoed through the corridors. We're under attack, someone yelled. Unknown hostiles, they're trying to breach the perimeter. Vargas swore under his breath. They knew we were diverting resources. This was a coordinated attack. He barked orders directing the remaining security forces to defend the base. Lena, get Astra to safety. Robert, take Joshua and his family to the shelter. As Lena and Vargas moved to protect Astra, a dart, fired from a silenced weapon, slammed into Astra's side. She roared in pain, her eyes widening in shock. Astra, Joshua cried out. Lena examined the dart. Tranquilizer, no. Something else, it's suppressing her abilities. As the attackers stormed the room, Vargas, shielding Astra and Lena, returned fire with deadly accuracy. But they were outnumbered and outgunned. He took a blast to the shoulder, staggering backward. Lena, get out of here, he yelled, clutching his wound. I'll hold them off. Lena hesitated, her face a mask of anguish. She looked at the wounded Vargas, the weakened Astra, and the terrified faces of Joshua and his family being rushed towards the shelter. A difficult choice was before her. Lena's fingers danced across the control panel, disabling the perimeter alarm with practiced ease. All right, almost there, she whispered, her gaze darting to the security monitor. The image flickered, but she had bought them enough time. Joshua, Mary, let's go. Robert, get the vehicle prepped. Vargas, propped up against a crate, winced as he adjusted the makeshift bandage on his arm. Head east, Lena, he directed, his voice raspy but firm. There's an old service tunnel about 50 kilometers out. It'll bypass the main checkpoints. I'll send you the coordinates. Contact Ben. He's the only one you can trust. Tell him Vargas sent you and he'll get you off-world. The armored vehicle lurched forward, Robert wrestling with the controls as a piece of debris slammed into the side, sending a shiver through the frame. Sparks flew from the dashboard and warning lights blinked erratically. Damn it, Robert cursed, fighting to maintain control. Sandstorm's coming in fast. Visibility's going to be 0 soon. Suddenly, Joshua gasped, his eyes wide. I see something, he stammered, his hand clutching his head. Images flashed in his mind, swirling nebulae, constellations he didn't recognize, a sense of immense distance. Astra's telepathic abilities were flickering, projecting fragmented images of a star map. Robert, sweat dripping from his brow, managed to reroute power to the navigation system. All right, I think I've stabilized it, he announced, his voice strained. But this storm is going to slow us down. We need to find shelter and fast. Unbeknownst to them, a squadron of heavily armed vehicles was closing in, led by a figure as cold and unforgiving as the desert itself. Zara, her face etched with drive, stared at the holographic display showing the fleeing vehicle's trajectory. They are heading east, she confirmed, her voice devoid of emotion. Sandstorm be damned, I want Astra alive. The artifact's location is paramount. No cost is too high. Zara leaned forward, her eyes glinting with an almost fanatical zeal. They will not escape. Increase speed and surround them. Inside the vehicle, Joshua noticed Astra shivering, her scales losing their usual luster. He instinctively reached for his jacket, draping it around her shoulders. It's okay, Astra, he said softly, his voice filled with genuine concern. We'll protect you. We won't let anything happen to you. Thank you, Joshua, Astra responded telepathically, her voice weak but filled with gratitude. I am sorry for the danger I have brought upon you. Back at the base, Mary frantically worked, her fingers flying across the holographic keyboard. The fragmented star map Astra had shown Joshua was slowly coming into focus. I think I've got something, she exclaimed, her voice filled with excitement. A remote star system, far beyond known space. It matches the coordinates. It's a long shot, but it's the best lead we have. Lena, her face etched with worry, managed to establish a secure comm link. Ben, it's Lena, she said, her voice hushed. Vargas sent me. We need your help. We have Astra and they're after us. A pause, then a familiar voice responded. Lena, you always did have a knack for getting into trouble. All right, I'll arrange safe passage, but you need to get to the rendezvous point. It's not going to be easy. Suddenly, the vehicle lurched violently, throwing everyone forward. An explosion rocked the chassis and the engine sputtered and died. Ambush. Robert yelled, grabbing his weapon. "Everyone out now!" As laser fire ripped through the air, Joshua saw his opportunity. He darted out of the vehicle, yelling and waving his arms, drawing the attacker's attention away from his family. "Hey, over here!" he shouted, his heart pounding in his chest. Zara emerged from the lead vehicle, her eyes fixed on Astra. "The artifact," she demanded, her voice cold and sharp. "Tell me where it is, and I might consider letting your human friends live. You know the truth." "It was my ancestors that betrayed your species and left you for dead. Tell me now." Astra, despite her weakened state, stood tall, her telepathic voice resonating with defiance. "I will never betray my people, nor will I allow you to desecrate the artifact. It is not yours to control." Just as Zara raised her weapon, a blinding wall of sand slammed into them, engulfing everything in a swirling vortex of chaos. The sandstorm had arrived. Joshua, blinded and disoriented, grabbed Astra's hand and pulled her through the raging storm, stumbling blindly through the wreckage. "Come on, Astra," he shouted, his voice barely audible above the howling wind. He could no longer see his parents. He could no longer see the attackers, only the sand. When the storm finally subsided, the world was a desolate landscape of swirling dunes. The vehicle was a mangled wreck, the attackers were gone, and Joshua and Astra were alone, lost in the heart of the desert. There was no sign of Lena, Robert, or Mary. Joshua and Astra stumbled blindly through the swirling ochre chaos. The sand, driven by winds that screamed like banshees, stung Joshua's exposed skin and grated against Astra's scales. Each gust threatened to rip them apart, scattering them like dust motes across the desolate landscape. They lurched forward, seeking any respite from the storm's fury, their vision reduced to mere feet. Finally, looming through the haze, a jagged piece of wreckage offered a sliver of hope, a section of a transport ship, half buried in the dunes, its metal hide twisted and torn but still providing a windbreak. They collapsed within its shadow, gasping for breath in the relative calm. We need shelter," Joshua choked out, wiping sand from his eyes. Astra, her breathing ragged, simply nodded, her massive frame trembling. Joshua, ever resourceful, began to explore the confines of their makeshift haven. The compartment was small, barely large enough for them both, and filled with the detritus of a long-ago disaster. Shattered crates, twisted metal, and the ghostly echoes of lives lost. He rummaged through the debris, his fingers brushing against cold, unyielding surfaces. He found a damaged emergency beacon, its screen cracked and flickering intermittently, and a sealed ration pack. He tore it open, revealing tasteless protein bars and dehydrated fruit. Water, however, was nowhere to be found. The realization tightened his stomach. Astra groaned, a low, guttural sound that vibrated through the metal floor. Her condition was deteriorating rapidly. The energy weapon had left deep, cauterized wounds that pulsed with dark energy, and the harsh environment was only exacerbating her suffering. Her eyes, normally bright and golden, were clouded with pain and a distant, haunted look. Suddenly, her body convulsed, and she began to mutter in a language Joshua didn't understand. Then her voice shifted, becoming clearer, younger, filled with a heartbreaking wonder. Images flashed before Joshua's eyes, unbidden, vivid. He saw a city of soaring spires crafted from shimmering crystal, bathed in the light of twin suns. He saw saurians, their scales gleaming like jewels, walking with grace and purpose through verdant gardens. He saw flying ships, sleek and elegant, crisscrossing the sky in patterns of intricate beauty. He saw Astra, young and vibrant, laughing with companions as they soared through the clouds. The vision shifted, darkening. Fire rained from the sky. The crystal spires shattered. The gardens withered, the saurians screamed. Joshua recoiled, stumbling backward, the images abruptly cut off. Astra lay still, her eyes wide and unfocused, lost in the labyrinth of her memories. "Astra," Joshua cried, shaking her gently. "Astra, wake up, you're here with me. We need to find our families, remember." Her eyes flickered, recognition slowly returning. She blinked, focusing on Joshua's face. The betrayal, she rasped, her voice barely a whisper. They promised peace and delivered fire. Joshua squeezed her hand, his small fingers wrapping around her massive claws. We're not there now, he said firmly. We're here. We need to serve Doctor. We need to get back to Dr. Hansen, to my mom and dad. Meanwhile, miles away, Zara stood before a holographic display, her face etched with frustration. The sandstorm was playing havoc with their trackers, scattering the signal like chaff in the wind. Damn this storm, she snarled. It's like trying to catch smoke. One of her lieutenants, a hulking figure with cybernetic implants, stepped forward. We're adapting our strategy, Commander. We're using thermal sensors to cut through the interference. We'll find her. Zara's eyes narrowed. You will find her, she corrected, her voice filled with steel. Astra is too valuable to lose. Alive. I want her alive. The star map fragments she carries. They belong to the collective. Back in the wreckage, Joshua worked feverishly on the emergency beacon. He'd always been good with electronics, a skill his father had patiently fostered. Using a piece of wire scavenged from a broken console and a shard of crystal from a shattered screen, he managed to bypass the damaged power regulator. The screen flickered more steadily, and a faint signal pulsed from the antenna. It's working, he exclaimed, his voice filled with a surge of hope. But the range is limited, it might not reach anyone. Astra, her strength slowly returning, focused her gaze on him. The star map, the fragments, they are connected to a specific constellation, she said, her voice stronger now. One that is only visible during a certain time of year, the collective. They seek to control that knowledge. Joshua frowned. What constellation? What time of year? I cannot recall precisely, Astra admitted, her brow furrowed in concentration. But the connection is visceral. I will know when I see it. Joshua looked around, his mind racing. Zara and her team were still out there, hunting them. He needed to buy them time. I'll try to hide our tracks, he declared, grabbing a piece of torn fabric. Maybe we can throw them off our scent. He began to sweep the sand, carefully obliterating their footprints, hoping it would be enough. Zara, analyzing the fluctuating tracker signals, slammed her fist on the console. They're moving erratically. They know we're coming. She barked orders into her comm. Split into 2 teams. Gamma Squad, sweep the immediate wreckage. Beta Squad, move towards the distress signal, but proceed with caution. I suspect a trap. The 2 squads moved out, their armored forms cutting through the storm. The search party, led by the lieutenant, advanced methodically, their weapons raised, scanning every shadow, every piece of debris. The other squad moved quickly towards the distress signal. Astra tensed, her senses heightened. They are coming, she warned, her voice low and urgent. They are close. We must hide. Joshua's eyes darted around the compartment, searching for a place to conceal themselves. There was nowhere to go. Quick, he said, grabbing some loose wires and a jagged piece of metal. Help me. Working together, they rigged a makeshift trap near the entrance to the compartment, a tangle of wires designed to trip and delay anyone entering. As the search party approached, Astra closed her eyes, focusing her mind. She reached out with her telepathic abilities, projecting an image of themselves moving away from the wreckage, further out into the storm. The illusion was faint, flickering, but it might be enough to buy them a few precious moments. The lieutenant paused, his head cocked, his cybernetic eye twitching. I'm getting a faint visual, he reported to Zara. They appear to be moving south, away from the wreckage. Zara hesitated. Impossible. The distress signal is coming from within the wreckage. It's a trick. I know it. But the visual, the lieutenant protested. Full sweep of the area, Zara commanded, her voice unwavering. Tighten the net. I want them found, now. The search party advanced, their movements becoming more deliberate, their search more thorough. The net was closing. Astra gasped, her body racked with pain. The exertion of the telepathic diversion had drained her remaining strength. She collapsed against the wall of the compartment, her eyes fluttering closed. Astra, Joshua cried, kneeling beside her. Astra, stay with me. He tried to lift her, but she was too heavy. He strained, grunting with effort, managing to get her arm over his shoulder. He staggered forward, half carrying, half dragging her through the wreckage. He spotted it then, a deep, narrow crevice in the rock formation, almost completely hidden by the drifting sand. It was a treacherous descent, the rock face sheer and unforgiving, but it offered the only chance of escape. He could see the lights of the search party getting closer, their beams cutting through the storm like knives. "We have to go down there," he said, his voice trembling with fear and purpose. He adjusted his grip on Astra, taking a deep breath. Then, without hesitation, he began to descend into the darkness. The ground vanished beneath their feet, replaced by a stomach-dropping slide into cool darkness. The open sky, the oppressive heat of the canyon sun, were gone, swallowed by the earth. A damp chill seeped into Joshua's bones, a stark contrast to the dry air above. He could hear Astra's heavy breathing beside him, feel the tremor in her massive frame as they descended. The crevice was deeper than he'd anticipated, the bottom hidden from view. Then a faint, ethereal glow bloomed around them. The walls of the crevice were covered in clusters of fungi, like living constellations clinging to the rock. They pulsed with a soft, internal light, casting long, dancing shadows that distorted the already unfamiliar space. The air tasted metallic, with a hint of ozone. Joshua brushed against one of the larger clusters, and a faint tingle ran up his arm. The fungi emitted a mild electrical charge, barely perceptible but undeniably present. He noticed the sand at the bottom of the crevice seemed warmer than it should, almost heated. Astra shifted, her scaled head turning slowly. A low growl rumbled in her chest, a sound that vibrated through Joshua's very core. "Something else is here," she rumbled, her voice echoing off the narrow walls. Something predatory. Above, at the crevice entrance, Zara's team worked with practiced efficiency. Scanners whirred, displaying complex readouts. "Signs of recent activity," a gruff voice reported. "They're down there." Zara's lips tightened. "Flush them out. Sonic pulse, maximum intensity." A high-pitched whine pierced the air, instantly turning into a throbbing, agonizing pressure in Joshua's skull. He clapped his hands over his ears, but it did little to block the sound. Astra roared in pain, a deafening blast that shook the entire crevice. The sound seemed to bore directly into his brain, making his teeth ache and his vision blur. Without thinking, Joshua ripped off his jacket and pressed it against Astra's head, trying to muffle the sound for her. He could feel her trembling beneath the rough fabric, her pain radiating outwards like heat. He held the jacket tight, focusing on her distress rather than his own agony. The sonic pulse stopped, replaced by an even more insidious assault. A fine white mist erupted from the bioluminescent fungi, filling the crevice with a choking cloud. Joshua coughed, his eyes burning. The spores were irritating, poisonous. He blinked rapidly, but his vision swam. Everything was blurry, indistinct. Temporary blindness. Zara's team lowered thermal scanners into the crevice, hoping to pinpoint their targets. But the spores interfered with the readings, creating a chaotic jumble of false images. "Damn it," Zara cursed. "I want a clear picture." "Readings are unreliable, Commander," one of her team members replied. "The spores are creating thermal interference." Zara's frustration reached a boiling point. "Rappel down," she snapped. "I want them alive. All of you move now." Deeper in the crevice, Joshua stumbled blindly, Astra guiding him with gentle nudges of her snout. The spores burned his throat, making each breath a painful effort. He could hear the scrape of boots on rock above, the unmistakable sound of Zara's team descending. They were running out of time. He reached out, his hands groping along the cold, damp rock. He found it a narrow passage, barely wider than his shoulders, leading further into the earth. "Astra, this way," he called, his voice hoarse. The passage was tight, claustrophobic. Joshua had to squeeze through, pushing and wriggling his way forward. He could hear Astra struggling behind him, her massive form too large for the opening. "I can't fit," she groaned. "You have to try." Joshua yelled, his voice strained. He braced himself against the far wall and reached back, grabbing her snout. "Push, I'll help you." He pulled with all his might, his muscles burning. Astra strained against the rock, her scales scraping against the stone. Inch by agonizing inch, she forced her way through the narrow opening. The sound of Zara's team grew closer, their voices echoing in the crevice. With a final, desperate heave, Joshua managed to pull Astra completely through. He didn't hesitate. He grabbed a loose rock and slammed it against the passage entrance, triggering a cascade of smaller rocks that sealed the opening. A small avalanche. A moment later, Zara's team reached the passage. "They're trapped." One of them shouted. Zara approached, her face a mask of fury. She kicked at the rocks, but they held firm. "Blast it open," she ordered. Behind the blocked passage, Joshua and Astra found themselves in a larger cavern, the bioluminescent fungi casting an eerie glow on the rough walls. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth and something else. Something musky and animalistic. Then two glowing eyes snapped open in the darkness. A large, insect-like creature, easily the size of a small vehicle, stirred from its sleep. Its chitinous armor shimmered in the faint light and its mandibles clicked ominously. It lunged. Joshua yelped, scrambling backwards. He and Astra were trapped with nothing but the supplies in their pack to defend themselves. As the creature swiped at them with a razor-sharp claw, Astra roared, and a flicker of memory ignited in her mind. Not just a vague sense of the past, but a clear, sharp image. "The artifact," she said, her voice filled with sudden certainty. "It is not a weapon, it is a key to a hidden sanctuary. Burning." Joshua scrambled back, the insect-like creature's mandibles snapping shut inches from his face. Bioluminescent fungi pulsed around them, casting the cavern in an eerie, shifting green light, illuminating the creature's segmented body and razor-sharp claws. He could smell the damp earth and a metallic tang, like old blood. Astra roared, a sound that echoed through the tunnels, and lunged again, forcing the creature back. Joshua knew they couldn't win in a straight fight. He fumbled for his lighter, the cheap plastic warm in his sweaty palm. An idea, desperate but maybe just crazy enough to work, sparked in his mind. He yanked off his jacket, the cold air raising goosebumps on his arms. Bunching it up, he flicked the lighter. The flame sputtered, then caught, licking at the fabric. He hurled the flaming jacket towards the creature. It recoiled, its multifaceted eyes widening. The distraction bought Astra a precious few seconds. A wave of dizziness washed over Astra. Images flooded her mind. A vast star-strewn sky, a swirling nebula, and a voice, ancient and powerful, whispering of a sacred duty. The insect-like creature. It wasn't attacking, it was guarding, testing. A memory, fragmented but clear, surfaced. The guardians of the sanctuary, protectors of the balance. She focused her mind, reaching out telepathically. "We seek the sanctuary. We mean no harm. We seek to restore what was lost." The creature paused, its mandibles clicking softly. It tilted its head as if listening. Then, with a gesture that seemed almost regal, it moved aside, revealing a narrow, almost invisible passage behind its nest. The passage was dark, promising unknown dangers, but it was a path forward, a path to the sanctuary. Joshua stared, mouth agape. It's letting us through." Astra nodded, her emerald eyes gleaming in the fungal light. "It was testing us. It recognizes our purpose." They squeezed through the opening, finding themselves in a network of tunnels far larger and more stable than the ones they'd previously navigated. The air was thick with the scent of minerals and something else, something ancient and powerful. Behind them, the sounds of digging echoed. Zara's team, they were osing in. Zara cursed, wiping sweat from her brow. The collapsed passage had taken too long to clear. Now they stood in the insect-like creature's nest, the air thick with its musk. Where did they go? She barked at one of her soldiers. The translator clicked, relaying Zara's question to the creature. It responded with a series of clicks and hisses. It says, "A hidden passage," the translator stammered. "Behind the nest, they are heading towards the sanctuary." Zara's eyes widened. The sanctuary, a myth, a legend. Could it be real? She grabbed her comm. "This is Zara, the sanctuary. It's real. Astra is heading there now. We need to intercept." This is no longer just about retrieval. This is about control. Deeper in the tunnels, Joshua and Astra reached a large chamber. The walls were covered in intricate carvings, ancient Saurian symbols that seemed to pulse with a faint inner light. Astra gasped, her eyes wide with recognition. I remember," she whispered, her voice trembling. "This is a map, a key." But more than that, the artifact. It's not just a weapon. It can restore balance to the galaxy, but it requires a ritual. She turned to Joshua, her gaze intense. A ritual that requires a Saurian dragon and a human child with a pure heart. Joshua swallowed hard. "You mean us?" Astra nodded. "Only we can activate it. Only we can wield its power." Joshua looked at the symbols on the wall, at the weight of responsibility that suddenly crashed down on him. But what if it's too much power? What if it falls into the wrong hands? "It cannot be used for evil," Astra said, her voice firm. "It is a force for balance, for harmony. It will only respond to good intentions." Then, etched into the wall, almost hidden amongst the other symbols, they found it, a map, a star chart pointing towards a swirling vortex of light and shadow. "The Shadow Nebula," Astra breathed, "the location of the sanctuary." A sudden tremor shook the chamber. The sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the tunnels. "Zara, they're here," Joshua hissed. Zara burst into the chamber, her weapon raised. "Astra, surrender the artifact, now." Astra stood her ground, her eyes blazing with defiance. "I will never let you control it." "Then you will die," Zara snarled. Joshua knew they were outmatched. He had to buy Astra some time. "Hey, Zara," he yelled, throwing a handful of pebbles at her. "Catch!" Zara swiveled, her weapon tracking him. It was enough. Astra reached out, her claws brushing against a hidden panel in the wall. A low hum filled the chamber. A circle of light shimmered into existence on the floor, a teleportation device. "Joshua, now!" Astra yelled. He sprinted towards her, diving into the circle of light just as Zara opened fire. Lasers scorched the air where they had stood a fraction of a second before. Then everything dissolved into a blinding white light. They materialized in darkness, the air cold and thin. They were inside a small, cramped space. Metal groaned around them. Outside, stars twinkled against an infinite black canvas. They were surrounded by asteroids. "Where are we?" Joshua asked, his voice trembling. "A Saurian scout vessel," Astra said, her voice strained. "Hidden within this asteroid field. It contains vital information about the sanctuary. But it's damaged. We need to repair it." Joshua cursed under his breath, the alien metal cold against his fingertips. The scout ship's primary navigation system was dead, the holographic display flickering with static. Wires sparked intermittently, showering him with tiny, stinging embers. "Can you access any diagnostics?" he asked, his voice echoing slightly in the cramped cockpit. Astra shifted, her massive form seeming to fill the already confined space. "Fragments. I see fragments. The Cathar, the core is offline." Her voice was raspy, tinged with pain. Joshua ran a hand through his hair, smearing grease across his forehead. "Cathar, great." He traced the pathways of the damaged console, his eyes scanning for anything familiar amidst the alien circuitry. "There," he muttered, pointing to a thick, blackened cable snaking its way towards the navigation core. "Energy conduit. Looks like it took a direct hit." The conduit was unlike anything he'd ever seen, a woven lattice of metallic fibers humming with residual energy. He began to scavenge parts from the ship's interior, ripping panels from the walls with surprising strength. The scout ship groaned in protest, metallic screeches filling the air. He found a coil of shimmering wire, salvaged from a damaged sensor array. "Maybe, just maybe, there is a system," Astra said, her voice strained. "Self-repair, but it requires a signature." Human signature. Joshua stopped, his brow furrowing. Human, what do you mean? Energy, resonance specific to your species. He stared at the conduit, then at his lighter, a battered Zippo he'd inherited from his grandfather. An idea sparked in his mind. I might have something. He carefully disassembled his lighter, exposing the flint wheel and the fuel reservoir. With nimble fingers, he rerouted the lighter's ignition circuit, boosting the voltage and modulating the frequency. It was a long shot, but he had to try. He held the modified lighter to a small receptor on the conduit. A faint blue light pulsed, and a low hum filled the cockpit. The self-repair system sputtered to life, tiny robotic arms extending from hidden compartments, weaving new fibers into the damaged conduit. But it was only a partial fix. The blue light flickered and died, revealing a deeper, underlying problem, a shattered crystal matrix at the conduit's core. Frustrated, Joshua thumped his hand against the console. That was when he saw it, a hidden compartment tucked away behind a panel he'd overlooked. Inside, nestled in a bed of faded velvet, was a small, ornate device. It pulsed with a faint red light. "What is that?" he asked, reaching for it. Astra recoiled, her eyes wide with a sudden fierce emotion. "No, don't touch it." He ignored her, lifting the device. It was a Saurian distress beacon. "Astra, what is this?" Her voice was a low growl. I don't know, I don't remember." Before he could press her, a klaxon blared through the ship. Red lights flashed. "Incoming vessel detected," a synthesized voice announced. "Bearing 090, designation Zara." Joshua cursed. "She found us." He glared at Astra. "The beacon. You knew about this, didn't you? You led us into a trap." "No, I swear I don't remember. My memories. They're still fragmented." Her voice was imbued with desperation. On the main view screen, Zara's ship, a sleek black dagger, loomed closer. Then smaller vessels detached from its hull, boarding craft. "Brace for impact," Joshua yelled. He scrambled to reroute auxiliary power to the ship's defensive systems, his fingers flying across the console. "We need to get those shields up." The boarding craft slammed into the scout ship with a jarring impact. Alarms wailed. The lights flickered violently. A grinding sound echoed through the ship as the boarding craft's cutting torches breached the hull. Astra gasped, clutching her head. Images flashed through her mind, a vast hall gleaming with gold, Saurians in ceremonial armor, their faces contorted in betrayal, a blinding flash of light followed by agonizing pain. She screamed, a raw, primal sound that shook the ship. Power surged from her, crackling arcs of energy dancing across her scales. "Astra, what's happening?" Joshua shouted over the din. He didn't get an answer. The boarding party burst through the breached hull, weapons raised. They were heavily armored, their faces hidden behind opaque visors. Joshua fired his scavenged pulse rifle, the shots echoing in the confined space. Astra unleashed a torrent of raw energy, incinerating one of the boarders in a flash of blue light. They fought back to back, a desperate dance of survival. But the scout ship was taking a beating. Panels buckled, sparks flew, and the air grew thick with smoke. After several minutes, the boarding party was defeated. The ship was badly damaged and the weapons system barely functional. Joshua slumped against a bulkhead, breathing heavily. "We can't keep this up forever. Maybe we should just abandon this whole thing." Astra turned to him, her eyes blazing with an intensity he hadn't seen before. "Abandon it, this is not just about survival, Joshua, the artifact. It is not just a weapon, it is a way to bring peace to the galaxy, to stop all wars." Joshua stared at her, skeptical. "Peace, all wars, that sounds like a fairy tale." "It is the truth," Astra insisted. "I know it, you must trust me." He hesitated, his mind racing. Was she telling the truth, or was he being led down a path to destruction? "Fine," he said, his voice tight. "We keep going. But when we reach this sanctuary, I'm verifying everything. No more secrets." They worked in silence, patching up the ship as best they could. Finally, they managed to coax the navigation system back online, plotting a course for the Shadow Nebula. But as the coordinates locked, A new alarm blared. Main engine severely damaged, the synthesized voice announced. Manual ignition required. Proceed with caution. Joshua braced himself, his hand hovering over the ignition switch. As he prepared to engage the engine, a cryptic warning message flashed across the console, superimposed over the navigation display. It was an ancient Saurian symbol, a stylized eye surrounded by jagged lines. He had no idea what it meant, but a chill ran down his spine. The engine compartment reeked of ozone and burnt metal. Joshua, grease smeared across his forehead, cursed under his breath. Wires sparked intermittently, casting flickering shadows across the mangled machinery. "This isn't just damage," he muttered, tracing a line of scorch marks with his finger. "This is sabotage." Astra, her eyes glazed, stood in the doorway. A low growl rumbled in her chest. I saw it, a flicker, something working on the engine." She shook her head, her brow furrowed in frustration. "But the image is fragmented. I cannot grasp the face." Joshua turned, his expression hardening. Sabotage by who, and how did they know what to target? He ran a diagnostic scan, the results scrolling across his wrist-mounted display. "These cuts are precise, made with tools designed for Saurian tech." Someone knew exactly what they were doing. He fixed Astra with a stare. "Care to explain?" Astra recoiled, her voice filled with hurt. "Are you accusing me? Do you think I would cripple our only means of escape?" "I'm asking how someone could sabotage a Saurian engine with such expertise," Joshua countered, his voice tight. "Unless, of course, they were trained by Saurians." Astra's spines bristled. "Saurian warriors. Yes, they were trained in many things, infiltration, sabotage, but that was long ago, and I had no part in it, human." Her gaze intensified, the reptilian eyes boring into his. "Trust me, Joshua, I am as much a victim here as you are." Joshua hesitated, seeing the genuine distress in her eyes. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "All right. I believe you, for now." He turned back to the engine, his mind racing. "We need to fix this, and fast." He began stripping parts from the disabled scout ship, his movements quick and efficient. He then moved to Zara's ship and began disassembling what he could. "I can reroute the power conduits, bypass the damaged regulators. It'll be a patchwork job, but it might hold." Hours later, after a grueling struggle against alien technology and dwindling resources, the engine coughed, sputtered, and finally roared to life. The ship shuddered violently, alarms blaring. "It's working!" Joshua yelled over the din, his face beaming with triumph. "But it's only at 40% capacity, and the energy matrix is unstable. We're running on borrowed time." As they limped away from the junkyard, a familiar symbol flashed across the navigation console, the stylized dragon of the Saurian Empire. This time, however, it was accompanied by a string of complex alphanumeric coordinates. Joshua tapped the sequence into the ship's star charts. "These coordinates, they point to a location deep within the Shadow Nebula." He frowned. "That's restricted space, highly unstable. What's there?" Astra gasped, her eyes widening. "That location, I remember, a research station, a Saurian facility. It was abandoned long ago after a catastrophic experiment." Joshua eyed her suspiciously. "A catastrophic experiment, and you're just now remembering this? Astra, why are you leading us towards a death trap?" They plunged into the inky blackness of the Shadow Nebula. The ship bucked and shuddered as it navigated the swirling clouds of cosmic dust and energy. The lights flickered erratically, and the air crackled with static electricity. "What's happening?" Joshua cried, struggling to maintain control. "Energy fluctuations," Astra replied, her voice strained. "The nebula is disrupting the ship's systems." Suddenly, a warning klaxon blared. "Sensors detect a large vessel approaching." Joshua exclaimed. "Cloaked, unknown origin." Astra stiffened. "The energy signature. I recognize it, the Silent Watchers." "Silent Watchers? Who are they?" "An isolationist sect of Saurians," Astra explained, her voice grim. "They guard ancient secrets. They do not take kindly to intruders." The ship lurched violently, the engine sputtering and dying. "We're losing power," Joshua shouted. "We're being pulled towards the station." As the derelict space station loomed into view, a massive warship decloaked, its weapons batteries glowing ominously. It was Zara's ship. A booming voice filled the cockpit. "Astra, surrender immediately. Release the human and face justice for your crimes. Refusal will result in the destruction of your vessel." Astra turned to Joshua, her eyes filled with fear. "The station. It is more dangerous than Zara, trust me." Joshua stared at the approaching warship, then at the looming space station. His mind raced, analyzing the situation, calculating the odds. He grinned, a spark of defiance in his eyes. "Dangerous, huh? Maybe we can use that to our advantage." His fingers flew across the console, rerouting power and recalibrating systems. "Hold on tight, Astra. This is going to be a bumpy ride." The ship shuddered violently, metal groaning in protest as unseen forces wrestled control. Alarms blared, a discordant symphony of impending doom. Zara's furious commands crackled uselessly over the comms, overridden by the station's inexorable pull. There was no fighting Itten. "Hey, we're going in." With a final jarring clang, the ship slammed against the docking clamps. Red emergency lights flashed, bathing the interior in a lurid glow. The outer doors hissed shut, sealing them inside. A moment of weightlessness, then a stomach-lurching sensation as artificial gravity slammed into effect. "Well, that was subtle," Joshua muttered, righting himself. Astra moved with a warrior's grace, already assessing the situation. "Stay close. This place. It feels wrong." The ship's ramp lowered with a groan, revealing a dimly lit corridor. Flickering fluorescent tubes cast long, dancing shadows, painting the scene with an unsettling, almost ghostly quality. The air hung thick with the musty odor of decay and ozone. Emergency power hummed, a constant, low thrum that vibrated through the deck plates. "Where are we?" Joshua asked, his voice echoing eerily in the cavernous space. "A research station," Astra replied, her voice low. "Abandoned long ago, they called it. Chronos Station." They stepped into the corridor, their footsteps echoing unnervingly. Rust-colored stains marred the walls and cables snaked across the floor like metallic vines. Joshua pulled out his scanner, its beam cutting through the gloom. "Anything?" Astra prompted. "Data logs," Joshua said, his voice tight with concentration. "Lots of them." Looks like they were studying temporal mechanics. He tapped a few commands and a holographic display flickered to life, showing schematics of complex machinery. They were trying to create a weapon, something that could erase enemies from time. A new sound cut through the hum of the station, the unmistakable hiss of a docking clamp. Zara's ship had arrived. A moment later, Zara strode into the corridor, flanked by 4 heavily armed guards. Their weapons were trained on Astra. "There's nowhere left to run, Dragon. Surrender now, and I guarantee the boys safe passage." Astra's eyes narrowed, her hand instinctively moving towards the energy blade at her hip. "You are being used, Zara. You do not understand what you are meddling with." "I understand that you possess information my superiors require," Zara retorted, her voice cold. "Information you will relinquish one way or another." Suddenly, a high-pitched whine filled the air, followed by the snap of energy. Red lights pulsed, bathing the corridor in an even more urgent glow. "What was that?" Joshua asked, his eyes darting around. "The station's internal sensors," Astra said grimly. "Something has activated." Without warning, a shimmering energy barrier slammed down, bisecting the corridor and separating Joshua and Astra from Zara and her guards. A section of the ceiling opened, revealing a sleek, automated turret that swiveled to target them all. "Defense system online," a synthesized voice announced, echoing through the station. "Unauthorized personnel detected, initiating containment protocols." Energy bolts lanced out, forcing everyone to dive for cover. Chunks of the corridor wall exploded in showers of sparks and debris. "This isn't good," Joshua yelled over the din. "A truce, Zara." Astra shouted, dodging another energy blast. "We will not survive this if we fight each other." Zara hesitated, then barked an order to her guards. "Hold your fire, focus on the defenses." Forced into an uneasy alliance, they scrambled for cover, dodging energy barriers and automated fire. Joshua, his mind racing, tried to make sense of the chaos. "It's targeting something specific," he realized, noticing a pattern in the defense system's attacks. "Some kind of energy signature." "Temporal anomalies," Astra said, her voice grim. "This station." It was not merely studying time, they tore a hole in it. "A temporal rift?" Joshua asked, his eyes widening. Astra nodded. "The experiment went catastrophically wrong. The station was abandoned, the rift. It was never contained." Zara, pinned down behind an overturned console, snarled, "My orders were to retrieve you, Astra, alive if possible, but now I see why. Your blood, it can stabilize the rift." Joshua stared at her, stunned. "What?" "It's true," Astra confirmed, her voice heavy. "Saurian physiology. It is uniquely attuned to temporal energies. My blood, it can act as a conduit, a stabilizer." Joshua scrambled towards a damaged control panel, ignoring the energy blasts that whizzed past his head. "There has to be a way to recalibrate the defense system. Shut it down." He banged his hand on the console and a cracked screen flickered to life. "It needs an access code." Saurian access code. Astra recited a string of complex glyphs and Joshua frantically entered them into the console. The system sputtered, then partially accepted the code. The automated turrets paused, but the energy barriers intensified, and the red lights flashed even faster. "It only partially worked," Joshua said, his voice infused with frustration. "It's triggered a more aggressive protocol." The station groaned, and a section of the wall slid open, revealing a circular chamber bathed in an eerie, pulsating light. At the center of the chamber stood a massive device, humming with raw temporal energy. The air around it shimmered and distorted, and the very fabric of reality seemed to fray at the edges. "That's it," Joshua breathed, his voice filled with awe and terror. "The source of the temporal rift." Astra recoiled, her eyes wide with a primal fear. "I sense something else. Within the rift, something ancient, something powerful. It is trying to break through." Zara, momentarily forgotten in the face of this new threat, spoke with a desperate urgency. "If that rift expands, it will consume this entire sector. Our only chance is to use your blood, Astra, at the center of that device." The station's defense system intensified its attacks. Emerald beams sliced through the air, vaporizing chunks of durasteel as they walked past. Each blast slammed against Zara's energy shield with concussive force, and even Astra's shimmering scales buckled under the assault. "They're not just firing randomly," Joshua shouted over the din, his fingers flying across a holographic display pulled from his wrist console. "They're targeting power signatures, specifically anything associated with temporal distortions." Astra hissed, her reptilian eyes narrowed. "The presence within the rift, it grows stronger. I can feel its will, pushing, probing, trying to break through." Zara, panting, her face slick with sweat, yelled, "This station. It wasn't just a research outpost. They were developing temporal weaponry, hoping to erase their enemies from existence before they were even born." Joshua's eyes widened. He swiped at the console, bringing up schematics of the station. "The temporal weapon core. It's still intact, down here." He pointed to a heavily shielded section of the lower levels. "It's emitting a massive, unstable energy field." Before they could react, a series of heavy blast doors slammed shut, sealing off the chamber containing the temporal weapon. Joshua was trapped inside. "Joshua!" Astra roared, clawing at the doors, but they were fused shut. A wave of telepathic energy washed over Joshua, a familiar presence cutting through the chaos. "Joshua," Astra's voice echoed in his mind, clear and strong despite the distance. "The schematics. Focus on the weapon's energy regulators. There's a bypass." Joshua, his heart pounding, followed Astra's mental guidance, navigating the complex web of energy conduits and control systems. "I see it," he muttered, tracing the path of energy flow with his finger. "The weapon. It can be used to stabilize the rift, but it needs a precise energy calibration." Zara's voice crackled over the comms. "There's no time for calibration. We need to seal the rift now. Use Astra's blood directly at the epicenter. It's the only way to guarantee immediate containment." "It's too risky," Joshua argued, his fingers still dancing across the controls. "We don't know what the long-term effects will be." He scrolled through a series of encrypted data logs, his eyes widening as he read. Wait, the original scientists. They believed a specific energy frequency could negate the temporal distortions, a harmonic resonance. And where are we going to find that? Zara snapped. "There's a device," Joshua replied, his voice rising with excitement. "A frequency emitter. It's designed to generate that specific frequency, but it requires a rare crystal, only found on Astra's home world." Suddenly, a new voice echoed in Joshua's mind, cold and ancient. "Human, you seek to close the door. I offer you knowledge, power, beyond your comprehension. Open the rift further and I will grant you dominion over time itself." The station groaned under immense strain. The artificial gravity fluctuated wildly, throwing Joshua against the consoles. Alarms blared as the temporal rift expanded, tearing at the fabric of reality. Zara, her eyes glazed over, a strange smile playing on her lips, grabbed Astra. "The rift demands a sacrifice," she hissed, dragging Astra toward the swirling vortex of energy. "Your blood. It will appease the entity." Joshua, seeing the change in Zara, acted without hesitation. He redirected the weapon's energy flow, creating a localized electromagnetic pulse that disrupted the defense system's targeting sensors. The emerald beam sputtered and died, plunging the chamber into momentary darkness. Astra, taking advantage of the distraction, wrenched herself free from Zara's grasp. "I felt it," she growled, her voice infused with distrust. "Your allegiance. It shifted. You are no longer yourself, Zara." The presence within the rift solidified, coalescing into a towering, shadowy figure that blotted out the stars beyond. Its voice boomed through the station, resonating in Joshua's bones. "Human, choose power or oblivion." Zara lunged forward, a plasma knife glinting in her hand. "The only way to stop it," she screamed, her voice distorted and unnatural, "is to kill Astra before it's too late." Joshua stood frozen, his mind racing. Trust Astra, listen to Zara, or try to use the frequency device, a desperate gamble that might save them all. The temporal rift expanded further, consuming a section of the station. Through the swirling vortex, Joshua glimpsed a distorted alien landscape. A twisted mockery of reality, filled with impossible geometries and writhing organic structures. Zara shrieked, a raw animal sound that ripped through the hum of the station. Her hand, trembling, gripped the disruptor pistol as she leveled it at Astra. "You're a plague. Your existence threatens everything." Before anyone could react, a blur of motion intercepted the crimson beam. Joshua. He'd thrown himself in front of Astra, the disruptor blast searing across his shoulder. He crumpled to the floor, a strangled cry escaping his lips. Pain lanced through his arm, a white-hot agony that threatened to overwhelm him. But through the haze he saw Zara, her face a mask of manic intensity, still aiming the weapon. He had to stop her. There has to be another way," he gasped, his voice tight with pain. Astra can be trusted." Ignoring Zara's wild eyes, ignoring the searing pain, Joshua pushed himself up, his legs wobbling. He focused on the schematics projected above the frequency device, the complex lines swimming before his eyes. He had to recalibrate it. He had to. "Don't you understand?" Zara screamed, her voice cracking. "This device, it's unstable. Messing with it could trigger a catastrophic implosion. It'll destroy the entire station." Astra's voice, a cool, calming presence in his mind, cut through the chaos. "Joshua, there is a safety protocol. Bypass it. Increase the power output." He hesitated. "But," Zara said, "the entity has clouded her mind, trust me. But be warned, bypassing the protocol is risky." He looked at the device, at the intricate network of wires and conduits. He could do this. He had to do this. But as he reached for the control panel, Zara lunged, her eyes glowing with an unnatural light. The entity was amplifying her. A metal panel ripped from the wall and hurtled toward him, propelled by unseen force. Joshua ducked, the panel slamming into the console behind him. He scrambled back, adrenaline coursing through his veins. Zara, her face contorted in a grotesque parody of a smile, raised another piece of debris. He dodged a wrench, then a sparking cable. Reasoning was useless. Zara was gone, replaced by the entity's puppet. He had to act, and fast. Taking a deep breath, ignoring the throbbing in his shoulder, Joshua reached for the power regulator. Astra's instructions echoed in his mind. He bypassed the safety protocol, a warning klaxon blaring as he cranked the dial. The device hummed, then vibrated, the air crackling with energy. Suddenly, the device emitted a high-pitched ringing and the lights started to flicker. The power grid strained, overloaded by the surge of energy. Sparks flew, and the air filled with the acrid smell of ozone. Astra roared, a sound of pure power, and an energy shield erupted around the device, a shimmering emerald dome containing the feedback loop. But her scales were starting to dull, and her movements seemed sluggish. "You delay the inevitable, little human," the entity's voice boomed in Joshua's mind, cold and devoid of emotion. "Earth will be consumed. Your efforts are futile." He glanced at Astra. Her life force was being drained, siphoned off to contain the energy field. He couldn't let her sacrifice herself. Suddenly, Zara grabbed him from behind, a steel grip tightening around his throat. "Come with me," she rasped, her voice a distorted echo of her own. "Into the rift. It's the only way to save them." His vision blurred, his lungs burning. He had to do something. Now. With a surge of adrenaline, Joshua smacked his head onto the override button, bypassing the safety protocols completely. He felt a jolt of pure energy course through his body as the device emitted a blinding pulse of light. The temporal rift flickered, momentarily disrupted. Zara's grip loosened, and she collapsed to the floor, her eyes wide with horror. The entity's influence was broken. As the pulse subsided, a vision flooded his mind. Astra's home world, a vibrant, verdant paradise consumed by tendrils of darkness. Saurians, noble and fierce, fighting to protect their people, their scales gleaming in the dying light. Zara sobbed, clutching her head. It showed me my family. Destroyed, I thought killing her would stop it." Astra, weakened but alive, approached Joshua, her eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and concern. "We must find the crystal," she said, her voice raspy. "It is the only way to fully power the device. I know where it is, but it lies deep within the rift." The team steeled themselves. The air around the temporal rift shimmered, a visual distortion that promised chaos and uncertainty. Joshua adjusted the bandage on his arm, wincing as he flexed his elbow. "I'm good to go," he insisted, his voice firm despite the tremor in his hands. Astra turned, her violet eyes filled with a grim light. "The rift is unstable. Temporal currents shift without warning. Stay close to me. Straying even a few meters could mean erasure." Zara stepped forward, her face etched with a desperate plea. "Please let me come, I can help. I understand temporal mechanics better than anyone." Astra studied her, her expression unreadable for a long moment. Finally, she nodded. "Her knowledge will be invaluable, and perhaps," she added, her voice barely above a whisper, "redemption is possible even in a place like this." With a shared breath, they plunged into the rift. The world exploded into a kaleidoscope of impossible colors and fractured realities. Fragments of different eras, glimpses of ancient forests, futuristic cities, and alien landscapes flashed by in the blink of an eye. The ground beneath their feet shifted constantly, gravity tugging them in unpredictable directions. The air crackled with an energy that made their skin crawl. Astra moved with a surprising grace, her massive form navigating the chaotic currents with an innate understanding. She raised a clawed hand, pointing towards a swirling vortex of energy. Temporal shear. We must bypass it. Suddenly, the ground lurched violently, throwing Lena off balance. She cried out as she began to float away, pulled by an unseen force. "Lena!" Marcus shouted, lunging forward and grabbing her outstretched hand. His boots scraped against the shifting ground as he struggled to hold her. "Magnetic tethers!" Zara yelled, fumbling with the device on her wrist. With a flick of her wrist, she launched a tether that snaked around a jagged rock formation. The tether snapped taut, pulling Lena back to safety with a jarring thud. Zara, her brow furrowed in concentration, tapped rapidly on her wrist-mounted device. Another shift in 3, 2, 1. Just as she finished speaking, the gravity reversed again, sending them scrambling for purchase. This time they were ready, the magnetic tethers anchoring them to the ever-shifting landscape. A low growl echoed through the distorted air. From the swirling mists, creatures emerged, beings of pure temporal energy, their forms shimmering and indistinct. They lunged at the team, their touch promising oblivion. "Temporal entities!" Astra roared, unleashing a blast of energy from her mouth. The blast struck one of the creatures, disrupting its form and causing it to dissipate into nothingness. Zara raised her device, firing a concentrated burst of temporal energy. The beam struck another creature, causing it to flicker and convulse before vanishing. "I can disrupt their energy fields, but it won't hold them for long," she shouted. Astra paused, sniffing the air. A flicker of unease crossed her face. "There are others here," she said, her voice low, sentient and wary. Emerging from the swirling mists were figures saurians, but gaunt and battle-scarred, their eyes filled with a deep-seated hostility. They raised crude weapons, aiming them at Astra and her companions. "Traitors!" One of the saurians snarled, his voice raspy and filled with venom. "You dare show your face here, Astra? We are not your enemy," Astra said, her voice resonating with a weariness that belied her size. "We seek the crystal. The crystal is corrupted," another saurian shouted. "Twisted by the entity, it will bring only destruction." Zara stepped forward, her hands raised in a gesture of peace. "We can help. I understand temporal energy. I can sense the corruption." The saurians eyed her with suspicion. "You are human," their leader said, his gaze cold and calculating. "Your kind cannot be trusted." Zara activated her device, projecting a shimmering field of temporal energy. The field pulsed gently, revealing the subtle distortions in the air around them. "I can stabilize the currents," she said, her voice steady. "I can protect you from the entity's influence." The saurian leader studied the field, his expression slowly shifting from hostility to grudging respect. "Show me," he said. Zara worked quickly, manipulating the temporal energies with a skill that belied her youth. The air around them seemed to calm, the chaotic currents lessening in intensity. The saurian leader nodded, his eyes narrowing. "We will help you find the crystal," he said, "but be warned, the entity is powerful, it is guarding the crystal, and it knows we are coming." Astra turned, her eyes glowing with an eerie light. "The entity is manipulating the rift," she said. "It is trying to trap us." As they approached the location of the crystal, a sense of oppressive power descended upon them. The air crackled with energy, the ground trembled beneath their feet. Joshua felt a growing unease, a sense of impending doom. Suddenly, a vision flashed through his mind, a vision of the crystal being used to unleash a wave of temporal energy that engulfed Earth, tearing it apart. He saw Astra standing beside the crystal, her eyes glowing with a malevolent light, a cruel smile twisting her lips. She was betraying them. Joshua stumbled back, his hand flying to his bandaged arm. He stared at Astra, his eyes filled with a dawning horror. Could he trust her? Was she leading them into a trap? Was Earth about to be destroyed? Destroyed? Joshua flinched, a visible tremor running through his small frame. He took a step back, then another, the polished floor of the temporal rift facility reflecting his wide, uncertain eyes. The image of Astra bathed in the entity's corrupting light was seared into his mind. He edged away from her, putting a noticeable several feet between them. Astra's head tilted, her reptilian eyes narrowing. "Joshua, what is wrong? You seem distant." She took a step towards him, her voice permeated with concern. Joshua's gaze darted to the side, avoiding her direct stare. "Nothing," he mumbled, picking at a loose thread on his sleeve. "Just tired." A pathetic lie, and he knew it. Zara, her brow furrowed, observed the exchange. She sensed the sudden chill between them, a disruption in the usually easy camaraderie. "Is everything all right, you two?" she asked, her temporal senses tingling with the subtle shift in their emotional states. She couldn't pinpoint the source, only that something was definitely amiss. Even the Saurian refugee leader, a hulking figure named Vorlag, noticed the discord. He watched from the edge of the chamber, his golden eyes narrowed with suspicion. He'd never fully trusted Astra, and this sudden tension only reinforced his doubts. He muttered something guttural to another refugee, a low rumble that Zara couldn't quite decipher, but the undercurrent of distrust was unmistakable. Meanwhile, the temporal rift shimmered more violently, the entity intensifying its manipulation. Cracks of pure, white energy spiderwebbed across the walls of the facility, the air crackling with an unnatural charge. The very fabric of time seemed to fray at the edges. Suddenly, the facility lurched, throwing them all off balance. A wave of temporal energy washed over them, distorting their vision and making their ears ring. They had stumbled into a time storm, a localized distortion where past, present, and future blurred. The team scrambled for cover, finding refuge behind crumbling consoles and overturned equipment. They were no longer in the facility. Joshua gasped as he looked around. Twisted metal and decaying structures surrounded them. They were in a ruined city, a ghost of its former glory. Buildings, once gleaming with Saurian architecture, were now hollow shells, scarred by time and conflict. Whispers seemed to echo through the streets, fragments of past conversations and forgotten tragedies. The air hung heavy with the weight of history, a palpable sense of loss and decay. Then he saw it. A shimmering, translucent image flickered into existence across the square. It was Astra, but not the Astra he knew. This Astra was younger, her scales gleaming with vibrant health, her eyes burning with fierce persistence. She was fighting alongside the entity, their movements synchronized, their power amplified by the other. The image faded as quickly as it appeared, leaving Joshua breathless and disoriented. He whirled on Astra, his voice tight with suppressed anger. I saw you fighting with it, with the entity." Astra's eyes widened in disbelief. "Joshua, what are you talking about? I would never, don't lie to me." Joshua shouted, his voice cracking with emotion. "I saw you, a temporal echo, you were working with it." Vorlag stepped forward, his hand resting on the hilt of his energy blade. "See, I knew it. She is a traitor just like the rest of her kind." The other Saurian refugees murmured in agreement, their distrust now boiling over into open hostility. Zara stepped between Joshua and Astra, her hands outstretched in a calming gesture. "Everyone, please, we need to calm down. Joshua, what exactly did you see? Astra, can you explain this?" Astra's voice trembled with a mixture of anger and hurt. "Joshua, you have to believe me. The entity is manipulating you, planting false images in your mind. I would never betray you or anyone else here. You have to trust me, please." The refugees growled, their weapons raised. Zara, torn between her loyalty to Joshua and her growing affection for Astra, felt a knot of despair tighten in her chest. "Please, everyone, we need to work together. We can't let this tear us apart." Suddenly, the ground trembled. The ruins around them began to crumble, the air thick with the stench of ozone. The entity was attacking, sending waves of corrupted temporal energy directly at the city. Zara threw up her hands, her temporal abilities flaring to life. She erected a shimmering shield around the group, deflecting the worst of the energy blasts. But the entity's power was overwhelming, the shield buckling and straining under the relentless assault. Sweat beaded on Zara's forehead, her face contorted with effort. "We can't stay here," Astra yelled, her voice barely audible above the roar of the temporal storm. "There's a hidden chamber, a sanctuary protected by ancient Saurian technology. We have to get there now." She led them through the crumbling streets, her knowledge of the city's layout guiding them through the chaos. They reached a seemingly solid wall, where Astra pressed a sequence of symbols etched into the stone. A section of the wall slid open, revealing a darkened passage. Inside, the air was still and silent, a stark contrast to the raging storm outside. The chamber was circular, its walls lined with intricate carvings and glowing crystals. In the center of the room, a holographic projector flickered to life, displaying a damaged recording. The image cleared, revealing a Saurian female, her features strikingly similar to Astra's. Her voice, though distorted by static, resonated with authority and urgency. "If you are seeing this, then our worst fears have come to pass. The entity, a being of pure temporal corruption, has awakened. It seeks to unravel the fabric of time itself, to plunge the universe into eternal chaos." The image flickered again, showing a crystalline structure, the same crystal they were looking for, pulsing with light and energy. "This crystal is our only hope. In its perfect working order, it is the key to stopping it." Astra stepped forward, her hand outstretched towards the projector. "We have to find it, we have to stop it." Even as the recording ended, the walls of the sanctuary began to shake. Cracks appeared in the ceiling, the ancient defenses weakening. The entity was breaking through. Astra and Joshua, driven by a shared sense of urgency, worked together, their movements surprisingly coordinated. They manipulated the ancient controls, rerouting power and activating dormant systems. For a moment, the sanctuary pulsed with energy, its defenses momentarily strengthened. The tension between them eased, replaced by a shared focus on survival. Then, with a deafening roar, the wall of the sanctuary exploded inward. Standing in the breach was the entity. It was a towering figure of twisted time and energy, its form constantly shifting and distorting. Fragments of past, present, and future swirled around it, creating a vortex of chaos. Its eyes, burning with malevolent energy, fixed on them, promising oblivion. The very air crackled, ozone stinging Joshua's nostrils. The sanctuary shuddered, a monstrous tremor that threatened to throw him off his feet. He watched, paralyzed, as a section of the shimmering energy dome rippled and dissolved, the entity's unseen force tearing through it like a hot knife through plasteel. Fear, cold and sharp, pierced through him, not for himself but for Zara, for the huddled refugees clinging to one another, their faces etched with terror. "It's stronger than we thought," Astra roared, her voice barely audible above the escalating chaos. Her eyes, usually pools of ancient wisdom, blazed with a desperate light. "You said you could control it." Joshua shouted back, the words filled with accusation. "You said we were safe here." Astra flinched, her massive head dipping slightly. "The vision you saw, it was a manipulation, a possibility, not a certainty, a future I actively fight against." Another section of the shield collapsed, a wave of raw energy washing over them. The air grew heavy, oppressive, and the very stones beneath their feet seemed to vibrate with malevolent intent. "Lies!" Joshua screamed, the word torn from his throat. "You're just like them. All you Saurians, enough." Zara's voice, though strained with exhaustion, cut through their argument like a laser. She pushed herself between them, her hand outstretched towards Joshua. "This isn't helping anyone. We need to focus now." The Saurian refugees, witnessing the conflict between their protector and the human boy, began to murmur amongst themselves. Doubt clouded their faces, their trust in Astra visibly wavering. Ignoring the chaos around her, Astra closed her eyes, focusing her immense mental power. Images flooded Joshua's mind. Vast emerald cities gleaming under twin suns, proud winged warriors soaring through the skies, a betrayal, a massacre, a descent into darkness. The history of the Saurians, a tapestry of glory and tragedy, unfolded before him. We were protectors, Astra's voice echoed in his mind, a mournful whisper. Guardians of balance. But we were betrayed, our knowledge twisted, our strength used against us. This entity, it feeds on discord, on fear. It seeks to unravel the fabric of time itself. She paused, her mental voice infused with urgency. The crystal, it is the key. It can be used to mend the rifts, but it must be cleansed, purified. I know of another location, a place where the crystal's power might be restored. Suddenly, Zara gripped Joshua's hand, her touch sending a jolt of energy through him. A new vision bloomed in his mind, sharper, more immediate than Astra's historical projections. He saw his parents, their faces grim, their weapons drawn. They were standing back to back, fighting desperately against shadowy figures that swirled around them like smoke. The entity was there too, a towering presence of pure darkness, its tendrils reaching out to corrupt them. And then he saw Astra, a figure of emerald defiance, battling the entity with all her might, her roars echoing across the desolate landscape. She was protecting them, shielding them from the encroaching darkness. The vision shattered, leaving Joshua gasping for breath, his heart pounding in his chest. He looked at Astra, her eyes filled with a pain he now understood. I saw, he stammered, the words catching in his throat. You were trying to save them. Astra nodded, her gaze unwavering. That is the future I fight for, Joshua. The future where your parents live. The future where we all live. A deafening crack echoed through the sanctuary. The last line of defense shattered, and a wave of dark energy surged forward, corrupting everything it touched. The once vibrant colors of the sanctuary faded, replaced by a sickly, pulsating gray. There's no time left, Astra said, her voice urgent. There's only one way to stop it, the time rift. We have to enter it. But, you said it was a one-way trip, Zara protested, her eyes wide with fear. It is, Astra confirmed grimly, but it's our only chance. Joshua remembered the device, the complex controls, the sequence of activation. He remembered Astra guiding him, her voice calm and reassuring. I think I know how to work it, he said, his voice gaining confidence. But I need your help. Together they raced towards the time rift generator, ignoring the chaos and destruction around them. Joshua, guided by Astra's mental instructions, worked feverishly, his fingers flying across the control panel. The machine sputtered, groaned, and then with a final surge of power, a swirling vortex of temporal energy ripped open in the center of the room. Now, Astra roared, her voice echoing through the sanctuary. They surged forward, Zara leading the refugees, Astra bringing up the rear, shielding them from the pursuing darkness. The entity's influence clawed at them, trying to pull them back, but they pressed on, driven by a desperate hope. With a final, desperate lunge, they plunged into the time rift. The world dissolved into a kaleidoscope of colors and sensations. Then, just as suddenly, it snapped back into focus. Joshua stumbled, his head spinning, his stomach churning. He looked around, his eyes widening in disbelief. They were standing on a desolate, war-torn planet, the air thick with the stench of decay and the acrid tang of plasma fire. Twisted metal skeletons littered the landscape, monuments to a forgotten war. The sky was a bruised purple, choked with smoke and ash. "Where are we?" Zara asked, her voice barely a whisper. Astra's eyes narrowed, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "Krill," she said, her voice heavy with sorrow. "A former Saurian stronghold. Now, it is controlled by the enemy." In the distance, a massive, corrupted structure loomed, its jagged silhouette piercing the toxic sky. It pulsed with a malevolent energy, radiating a palpable sense of temporal distortion. Tendrils of dark energy snaked across the landscape, converging on the structure like veins feeding a monstrous heart. The air hung thick with the scent of ozone and decay as they stepped into the ruins of Krill. Twisted metal skeletons of buildings clawed at the sky, monuments to a war long past. Each footstep crunched on shattered plasteel and pulverized stone, a grim reminder of the lives lost. "This was once a vital stronghold," Astra rumbled, her voice echoing through the desolate landscape. "A bulwark against the encroaching darkness. My kin held this world for centuries." A flicker of pain crossed her features, a ghost of memory surfacing. "We failed." Laser grids sliced through the air, remnants of automated defense systems. Drones, their metallic bodies scarred and blackened, patrolled predetermined routes. They moved with a jerky, unsettling precision. The group moved carefully, navigating the treacherous landscape. Joshua, his eyes wide with a mixture of awe and sadness, approached a downed drone. Can we fix them?" he asked, his fingers itching to tinker. "Maybe use the parts." Astra's tail lashed. "No, child. Krill is steeped in temporal energies, the enemy. They twisted it. The tech here is not safe. Corruption lies dormant, waiting to latch onto unsuspecting minds." They pressed on, deeper into the ruins, until they stumbled upon a hidden entrance, a blast door sealed beneath a collapsed structure. With Zara's help, they managed to pry it open, revealing a dark, descending passage. The air grew colder, heavier, as they entered the underground bunker. Flickering emergency lights cast long, dancing shadows on the walls. Data consoles, their screens cracked and faded, lined the corridors. "Saurian records," Astra breathed, her eyes scanning the alien script. "Tactical data. Perhaps answers." Zara worked to decipher the information, her fingers flying across the ancient interfaces. The entity. It originated from beyond known space. It feeds on temporal energy, amplifying its power, spreading its influence like a virus. Suddenly, the bunker shuddered. Red lights flashed and sirens wailed. "Defense systems activated," Zara yelled over the din. "We're trapped." Robotic guardians, their armor gleaming menacingly, emerged from hidden compartments. Lasers blazed, forcing the group to take cover. Joshua, his mind racing, spotted a control panel on one of the guardians. He scrambled towards it, dodging laser fire. With a desperate surge of energy, he bypassed the security protocols and began reprogramming the machine. "Joshua, no." Astra roared, but it was too late. The Guardian's eyes flickered, then turned to the other robots, unleashing a torrent of plasma fire. The immediate threat neutralized, they pressed onward. "I sense others," Astra said, her brow furrowed. "Survivors, but be warned. The entity's influence is insidious. They may not be who they seem." As they emerged from the bunker, they were met with a horrifying sight. A horde of mutated creatures, their bodies twisted and warped by the temporal energy, charged towards them, snarling and clawing. The battle was brutal. Zara unleashed blasts of energy, Astra tore through the ranks with tooth and claw, and Joshua, armed with a scavenged plasma pistol, fought with surprising ferocity. But something was wrong. Zara's powers were fluctuating wildly, becoming stronger, more destructive, but also increasingly unstable. Astra saw it first. The temporal energy. "It's affecting you, child, accelerating your abilities but also endangering your life." They managed to subdue one of the mutated creatures, its mind fractured but still capable of rudimentary communication. Zara probed its thoughts. The enemy. They planned to use Krill as a staging ground, an attack on other planets. "What kind of attack?" Joshua demanded, his voice trembling. The creature gurgled, its eyes rolling back in its head. "A beacon. A temporal beacon, being constructed at the corrupted structure." Astra's eyes widened in horror. "A device capable of collapsing timelines, altering the past itself." Joshua's blood ran cold. "They don't just want to conquer the present," he whispered. "They want to rewrite history." Suddenly, Zara cried out and collapsed, her body convulsing. The energy around her flickered and died. Astra knelt beside her, her face grim. "The temporal energy. It's too much for her. She's dying." She looked at Joshua, her eyes filled with a desperate tenacity. "There is only one way to save her. We must reach the corrupted structure and disable the temporal beacon. but it will mean facing the full force of the enemy. Astra's hands, glowing with a faint, emerald light, pressed against Zara's shimmering scales. The scales, usually a vibrant, almost iridescent blue, were now dull, almost gray like a fading star. Zara's breath came in ragged gasps, each one a painful rasp against the unnatural silence of the temporal wasteland. Astra's brow furrowed, a low growl rumbling in her chest. Her temporal resonance is failing, she rasped, her voice strained. I cannot fully stabilize her. The corruption, it is too strong. Joshua knelt beside them, his face etched with worry. He reached out, his small hand hovering over Zara's wing, but hesitated to touch. What can we do? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. Astra looked at him, her golden eyes filled with a desperate dedication. We must reach the corrupted structure, Joshua. It is the source of the temporal anomaly. If we can disable it, perhaps there is still a chance to save Zara, but I may not be able to go with you. No, Joshua said, his voice firm. We're going together, we'll find a way, we always do. We're not leaving Zara and we're not leaving you. We'll stop this. Together. He stood, his small frame radiating a surprising strength. The air crackled around them, the temporal energy intensifying. The already bizarre landscape twisted further, colors blurring and familiar shapes dissolving into impossible geometries. The ground beneath their feet shifted, making each step a precarious gamble. A low, guttural moan echoed through the distorted valleys, a sound that seemed to claw at the edges of sanity. As they pressed forward, the shadows began to writhe, coalescing into grotesque shapes. Mutated creatures, twisted parodies of life, emerged from the swirling chaos, their eyes burning with malevolent hunger. They were larger now, more aggressive, their bodies warped by the temporal energies into nightmarish configurations of bone and flesh. Stay behind me, Joshua, Astra growled, her claws extending. I've got something, Joshua said, reaching into his pack. He pulled out a salvaged piece of krill tech, a shimmering device he'd cobbled together from discarded components. It's not much, but it should give us a little protection. He activated the device, and a faint, pulsating field of energy enveloped them, a fragile bubble against the storm of temporal distortion. It flickered and sputtered, barely holding, but it was enough to deflect the worst of the energy, allowing them to move forward with slightly more confidence. But the environment itself seemed determined to thwart their progress. Illusory pathways opened and closed, leading to nowhere. The ground shifted beneath their feet, trapping them in swirling vortexes of disorienting energy. The wind whispered secrets in their ears, voices that spoke of madness and despair. Astra stopped suddenly, her head cocked to one side, her nostrils flaring. There is a presence ahead, she said, her voice low and strained. A powerful one. A guardian of the corrupted structure, it is, empowered by the entity. As she spoke, the ground trembled and a colossal figure emerged from the swirling chaos. It was a creature of immense size and power, formed from raw temporal energy and corrupted Saurian technology. Twisted metal and pulsating energy coils formed its limbs, and its eyes burned with an unholy light. Joshua stared up at the creature, his heart pounding in his chest. We need a distraction, he said, his mind racing. Astra, can you use your connection to Krill to draw it away? Astra hesitated, her face etched with pain. It is dangerous, Joshua, to connect to Krill's energy again. It will weaken me further, and it may expose my memories to the entity. We don't have a choice, Joshua said, his voice urgent. We need to get to that beacon. We need to save Zara. Astra closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and nodded. Very well, she said, her voice barely a whisper. I will create a diversion. She reached out with her mind, probing the swirling temporal energies, seeking a connection to Krill. A surge of power coursed through her, and she cried out in pain as the entity's presence flooded her consciousness. With a roar that shook the very foundations of the world, the Guardian turned its attention away from them, drawn by the irresistible lure of Krill's temporal energies. It lumbered off into the swirling chaos, its massive form disappearing into the distorted landscape. Astra collapsed to her knees, her body trembling, her face pale. "Go," she gasped, her voice weak. "Go now, before it returns." Joshua helped her to her feet, his face filled with concern. "Are you okay?" "I will be," she said, her voice strained. "Just go." They pressed on, their pace quickening as they approached the corrupted structure. It loomed before them, a towering monolith of twisted metal and pulsating energy, a monument to temporal chaos. The air around it crackled with raw power, and the ground throbbed with an unnatural rhythm. Even more mutated creatures guarded the beacon, their eyes burning with feral intensity. They charged at Astra and Joshua, their claws and teeth bared, their bodies contorted into grotesque shapes. The battle was desperate and brutal. Astra fought with a ferocity born of desperation, her claws tearing through flesh and metal, her roars echoing through the chaotic landscape. Joshua used his salvaged tech to create diversions and openings, his quick thinking and ingenuity keeping them alive. As they fought, Joshua scanned the beacon, his eyes darting across the complex network of wires, conduits, and energy emitters. "I need to find a way to disable it," he muttered, his fingers flying across his datapad. "But I can't just shut it down. It could cause a catastrophic temporal collapse." He paused, frowning. "Wait, I'm seeing something, a specific energy signature. It's like a fail-safe, but there's a step missing, a code, a temporal key." He looked at Astra, his eyes wide with realization. "Astra, do you know anything about a temporal key, a code that can disable this thing safely?" Astra paused in her fighting, her brow furrowed in concentration. "There was a sequence, a temporal disengagement code, but it was wiped from my memory long ago." "We need that code, Astra," Joshua said, his voice urgent. "Without it, we can't stop this thing without destroying everything." As they were talking, an alarm sounded, and they could hear a loud entity coming towards them quickly. Then the sky cracked, not with thunder but with the impossible geometry of a warship so vast it seemed to consume the very heavens. Its hull, a patchwork of obsidian and burnished gold, blotted out the already corrupted sky, casting long, jagged shadows across the temporal beacon. Before either of them could react, emerald beams of energy lanced down, vaporizing chunks of the already unstable structure. Joshua yelled, shoving Astra behind a twisted girder just as another beam seared the air where they'd been standing. The smell of ozone and burnt metal filled his nostrils. "They're not trying to destroy it," Astra gasped, her voice strained. "They want to control it." They learned something crucial. Astra pressed her hands to her temples, her eyes squeezed shut, sweat beaded on her brow. "The code. I need to remember the code." But the warship's presence was a psychic hammer, pounding at the edges of her mind. Jagged shards of memory flickered battles, betrayals, faces of long-dead Saurians, but the code remained elusive, buried beneath a wall of pain. "It's disrupting her mental processes," Joshua realized, scanning their surroundings. He spotted a tangle of wires and salvaged plating from the ship. "I need to shield her." Working with frantic speed, he ripped the plating free and began weaving a makeshift Faraday cage around Astra, channeling the wires to ground the energy. Sparks flew as he connected the final circuit. It wouldn't block everything, but it would dampen the worst of the warship's interference. Astra inhaled sharply, her eyes fluttering open. "It's helping. Fragments. I'm seeing fragments." Images flashed across her mind, complex symbols, swirling equations, the faces of her ancestors, but they were incomplete, jumbled like pieces of a broken mirror. A ramp extended from the warship's underbelly, disgorging a squad of heavily armed soldiers. Their armor was sleek and black, their weapons pulsed with menacing energy. They moved with ruthless efficiency, fanning out to secure the perimeter. Joshua grabbed his pulse rifle, his heart hammering against his ribs. "They're coming for the beacon." He sighted down the barrel, squeezing the trigger. A soldier crumpled, his armor useless against the concentrated energy. Another fell, but they kept coming, an inexorable tide of black. This isn't going to be enough to hold them back. Thinking fast, Joshua grabbed a small device he'd been tinkering with earlier, a salvaged EMP generator. He ripped out a regulator chip, rerouted the power conduits, and muttered, "Hope this works." It was designed to disable vehicles, not soldiers, but he had an idea. He sprinted to a more open area, dodging energy blasts. With a grunt, he activated the EMP, sending out a concentrated pulse of electromagnetic energy. The soldiers froze, their weapons sputtering, their armor momentarily dead. It would only last for a few seconds, but it was enough. Now, Astra. Joshua yelled, firing another burst to keep the soldiers pinned down. Astra, eyes blazing with renewed focus, reached out and touched the beacon's control panel. Her fingers danced across the surface, inputting the code, each keystroke a victory against the warship's psychic assault. The beacon shuddered, groaning under the strain. Waves of temporal energy rippled outwards, distorting the air, blurring the lines between past, present, and future. Joshua felt a sickening lurch in his stomach as reality twisted around him. The warship opened fire again, targeting the beacon's core. "No!" Astra screamed, throwing herself in front of the control panel. A shimmering shield of energy erupted around her, deflecting the blast, but the strain was immense. Her scales cracked, her muscles spasmed, and she crashed to the ground, convulsing. Then, a voice boomed from the warship, amplified and distorted, but undeniably clear. "Astra, stop this. You don't understand what you're doing." The warship's commander appeared on a holographic display, a tall, imposing figure in gleaming armor. "We are from the future, Astra, a future where the Saurians rule the galaxy, a future you are about to erase." The commander paused, his voice softening, almost pleading. "If you complete this deactivation process, you will doom yourself. You will doom your entire species. You will never come to be." Astra, lying on the ground, her breath ragged, looked up at Joshua, her eyes filled with a terrible sadness. Then, with a strength that defied her injuries, she spoke, her voice barely a whisper but filled with unwavering perseverance. "I will choose to save this world, even if it means sacrificing the history of my people." Astra, her emerald scales shimmering faintly under the harsh light of the control room, swayed slightly. Pain lanced through her, each breath a ragged whisper. "The shutdown sequence. It must be completed, my people." Her voice trailed off, the unspoken words heavy with the weight of generations of war. "This is their fate." Joshua, his face streaked with grime and sweat, grabbed her hand, his small fingers surprisingly strong. "No, there has to be another way, Astra. You can't just give up. We can't let them destroy themselves." He looked at her, his eyes blazing with a fierce grit that belied his age. "Please, Astra, just listen. There has to be another option." Astra looked into his eyes, seeing not pity but unwavering belief. He was right. There had to be another way. "Tell me what you are thinking, little one." Joshua's mind raced. He glanced at the artifact, humming with contained energy, then at the beacon, its light pulsing rhythmically. An idea sparked, audacious and improbable, yet possible. The artifact. It manipulates space, right? And the beacon, it's a signal, a call. What if we used them together, created a portal, sent the warship somewhere else? Astra's eyes widened. A dimensional rift it is. Theoretically possible, but the energy required. "We can do it," Joshua insisted, his voice filled with conviction. "We have to try." He ran to the console, his fingers flying across the controls, initiating the sequence. The artifact began to glow brighter, its hum intensifying. The beacon pulsed faster, its light bathing the room in an ethereal glow. The air crackled with energy. A swirling vortex of light began to form in the center of the room, a tear in the fabric of reality. The warship commander's voice, distorted with static, boomed through the comms. "What are you doing? You are dooming us all." Joshua ignored him. He turned to Astra, his face resolute. I have to go through to close it. I have another idea, to save everyone, both your people and Earth. Astra's eyes widened. Joshua, that is too dangerous. I will go. No, Astra. You will stay here and help me get back. Please trust me. Astra hesitated, then nodded slowly. I will do whatever I can to bring you back, little one. With a deep breath, Joshua stepped into the swirling vortex. The portal shimmered, pulsed, and then snapped shut, severing the connection. On the bridge of the Saurian warship, chaos reigned. The temporal wake slammed into the ship. Saurian warriors roared in confusion and fury. Joshua, small but resolute, stood before them. He activated the holographic projector, displaying images of Earth, its cities, its oceans, its people. He showed them the faces of children, laughing and playing, oblivious to the impending doom. Then he showed them the devastation their war had wrought on other worlds, the suffering they had inflicted. He spoke, his voice amplified by the ship's comm system, translated into the Saurian tongue. This is not the way. There is another path, peace, understanding. We can choose to build, not destroy. At first his words were met with scorn and derision, but as the images continued to flicker across the screen, a flicker of doubt began to appear in the warriors' eyes. They saw the consequences of their actions, the pain they had caused. For the first time in generations, they questioned their purpose. Seizing the moment, Joshua activated his advanced weapon, aiming not at the warriors but at the ship's core. With a blinding flash, the warship imploded, disintegrating into cosmic dust. The force of the explosion threw Joshua back, slamming him against a bulkhead. Pain seared through him. He struggled to his feet, his vision blurring. He had to get back. He had to close the portal. With a supreme effort, he staggered towards the deactivated portal controls. He reached out, his fingers trembling, and slammed his palm onto the activation plate. The portal flickered back to life, a shimmering gateway back to Earth. He stumbled through, collapsing just as the portal imploded behind him, severing the temporal connection forever. The threat to both the past and future was neutralized. Astra, her heart pounding in her chest, rushed to Joshua's DRE as he collapsed. Joshua, no, doctor. Hansen and the medical team swarmed around him, their faces grim. They worked frantically, using a combination of human and Sauria doctor technology to stabilize him. He's alive, Dr. Hansen announced, her voice tight with relief, but he sustained severe injuries. We need to get him to the medbay, doctor. Oh. As they carried Joshua away, Astra approached Dr. Hansen. He did it. He saved us all, but at what cost? Dr. Hansen placed a hand on Astra's shoulder. He's strong, Astra. We'll do everything we can. In the medbay, Astra revealed the artifact's final secret. The artifact. It has the power to heal him, but it will take time, and he must remain connected to it. Together, Astra and Joshua were connected to the artifact. A soft, golden light emanated from the device, enveloping them both. Days later, Joshua awoke. He was fully healed, but he was different. He had seen the vastness of the universe, the potential for both destruction and creation. He understood the power of compassion, the importance of understanding. He looked at Astra, her emerald eyes filled with concern. It's okay, he said, his voice deeper, more resonant than before. I understand now. News of Joshua's actions spread throughout the galaxy. The Saurians, inspired by his courage and compassion, chose a different path. They abandoned their warlike ways, focusing instead on peace, cooperation, and understanding. The alliance between humans and Saurians became a symbol of hope for the galaxy, ushering in an era of unprecedented peace and understanding. The little boy who offered water to